Hey there and welcome to Matt's Garage. Today I'm working on this 2013 Kia Soul and we're going to be replacing the rear brake pads with these brand new Bosch pads. So watch along, I'm going to show you the procedure step by step. It's important to visually inspect your brakes on your car periodically and check the not just the brake pad wear but also the surface of the rotor, because that's what's going on here. On the front side it doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to show you the back side in a second and you'll be surprised. It's all rusted upscale on the back side and you really can't tell by driving the vehicle. There's not a lot of symptoms other than you might hear a slight rubbing sound coming from the brakes. This does commonly happen on the rear brakes because your front brakes do 70% of your braking, so the back brakes just aren't used as heavily and have more of a tendency to have this happen to them. It's really hard to see, but right in there between the heat shield and the caliper bracket you can see that there's just a little stripe there on the rotor where it's been contacted by the pad. It should be full width of the pad that it's contacting, but because there's rust scale built up on the rotor, it's not contacting properly. I just have a few basic tools laid out here to do the job, but one of the main things you'll need is some way to compress the caliper. So this is the correct tool for it, but you can also use a C-clamp or a giant pair of channel locks will work. So here are the pads. They look like they were sent back, being that they're in a shop rag, so I hope they're actually new ones. And there is a little bit of grease just to lubricate things as we put it together. I'll show you that. So there we go. There's the new pads. They are new. You can see where I jacked up right where those three little notches are in the lip there. And I just like to put a block of wood on there so I don't scrape up the paint and whatnot. Kind of spreads out the weight a little bit. And then I like to put some blocking around the front tire to make sure the car can't roll around when I'm pulling on it. So now we'll get that wheel removed. It's 21mm on the lug nuts there. If you don't happen to have an impact like me, you'd want to break the lug nuts loose a little bit before you jack up the car, of course. If your wheel is seized on like this one is, and you can't get it off just by going like that, what you do is thread two lug nuts back on loosely, and then get a hammer and hammer on the back edge of the tire. The tire, not the rim. Okay, here we are with the wheel off, as you can see. Put the wheel under the car for safety. And then it looks like I can just get these 14mm bolts off on the actual bracket. I don't have to remove the caliper from the bracket. Yeah, I'm just noticing there's nuts on there I'm going to have to hold to get that right out. And they're definitely bigger, so I'm going to go find, it might be 18mm by the look of it. Okay, well 18 fits a little loose on that nut, but it'll work, and 17's too tight for some reason. The hose is very short, but I'm doing my best to show the procedure here. Now this bracket will separate and the pads come out with the bracket. So actually you can just kind of hook that over there because it'll actually sit nicely there. And then these are all frozen up in there. That's why this rotor was getting rusted up, and if you don't deal with this, it's going to do the same thing again. I can't even, this one's right seized in there, I can't even move it. See, that one has the squealer on it, and that goes on the same side as the slides. Squealer goes to the inside, the back side. We're just going to clean them up with a wire wheel. If you get premium pads, they come with a new one of these, but I did not. That's why it comes with grease. You put that on the slide locations, and you also put grease on the piston and right there. So we'll get to that later. Right now we're going to have to compress the piston. So what you do here, you put that used pad in there. Don't use your new one. And then if you have this tool, you slide it in there. You can see it's compressing the piston in. Okay, and now it bottomed out, so we're good. Because the old pads are worn, you have to compress this back to allow room for the new pads that you're going to be installing. And you can just use a hand wire brush like this to clean up your slides. See, the wire brush cleaned those up nicely. Should slide nice now. We're just going to put this aside for now. I don't want to put the grease on it yet. Okay, now there are some Phillips head screws here that hold this rotor on, so we have to undo those before we can go any further. Just trying to do it so I can hook my caliper back on up here. So there we go. That is the emergency brake drum in there. So you want to clean all that brake dust out of there. This is when you want to check your bearing, make sure it still spins nice and smoothly, and it does. Okay, now you can see how bad that was. Less than half of the braking surface on the back side was actually contacting, and we want to clean up this rust a little bit too. I have an at-home process I've actually made a video on before. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick resurface with this 60 grit flap disc on my angle grinder. I have a video where I show the process of how I do this and how I get it even. You do want to measure your minimum thickness when you're doing this, or just replace it, get a new one, replace it, or get this professionally done at an auto parts store. Okay, you can see I cleaned up the braking surface there on both sides. Now it will look a little rough for a couple weeks till the pads kind of break in onto the surface. Now we're just going to clean up here where the emergency brake rides, and I'm just going to use that kind of a flap disc and a drill. Works really good. You can reverse it. Okay, and now I'm just going to go around with the wire wheel and clean up the mating surfaces here. Get the rust scale off of them, maybe around the edges a bit, just to make it look kind of like a brand new part. Okay, so now that we got everything all cleaned up, I'm just going to put a quick coat of black paint on, not just for cosmetics, but to keep the rim from sticking. So just a little black rust paint, and then a paper towel. I wipe it back off the braking surface. If there's a little on the braking surface, it will rub right off. If there's too much on there, it will glaze the pads. So if you really want to get fussy, you can use some brake clean on it, and that will wipe it off when it's pretty fresh too. Okay, so I'm just going to use some 80 grit to take the glaze off of these shoes here. They don't even look too glazed, but whatever. Make sure you're wearing a dust mask when you do this, because this is toxic dust here. And now don't use compressed air on it, but rather brake clean to clean that dust off. So here we go, our nice reconditioned brake rotor, and the only thing you gotta line up these two holes for your retaining bolts is all. So there we go, and if your e-brake needs adjusting, like if your handle's coming too high up, now would be the time to tighten it up. This one comes up the normal amount and tightens right up, so we'll call that good. And then these little retainer bolts, you want to put a little grease or anti-seize or something on them. These still have some on there, so I'm going to cheat and just leave them as is. Okay, well, our brake rotor's back on. We just have to assemble this caliper, and we're going to use some grease. So that's actually the next step here, is I got to apply some grease to the kind of wear points in here. So all around there. Now we just want to put grease in these slide locations here. You want to have those really clean and greased up. Okay, now remember the squealer, that's that little thing that'll let you know when your brake pads are due for replacement. That goes on the inside. Okay, now we can actually install the caliper bracket on here, and we'll put the caliper on after. So again, I will include torque specs if I can find them, but I'm just going to snap it up with the impact. I will check it later with my ratchet. So I'm just finishing up on the left side here, and I just wanted to warn you guys that I didn't notice. I double checked, I got it right by chance, but the caliper bracket on the top has a slightly longer bolt. So that longer bolt goes on the top of the caliper mounting bracket. There we go, you can see that, how that fits in there. And now you just want to get your pads all the way slid in. They seem real tight in these sliders here. Okay guys, well, crazy enough, these are Bosch pads and everything. I had noticed that the box had been opened, that they'd been returned, and actually they fit too tight in the slides. So what I was able to do is just take my grinder and take like the little metal defects off the edge, and now they slide freely in there. So you don't want to make them too loose that they rattle in there or anything, but they gotta slide freely. Okay, so we'll just get these tightened up again just with the impact, and then I'll check them after by hand to confirm it. Okay, well, we're pretty well finished up on the right side here. I'm just going to put the wheel back on and move on to the left side. It's going to be exactly the same process over there, so I'm not really going to show that. Before you put your wheel back on, just make sure your flange is all clean here, because if it isn't, your wheel could have a tendency to loosen up on you or vibrate. So you can just use a hand wire brush again and just brush the scale off there. You can use a little wire wheel on your drill, whatever works for you, but just get that loose scale off of there so that you're sure that it's clamping down evenly. Okay, and now I just snapped them up quick with the impact, but I do torque them after, so you don't want to torque it with the impact. Okay, well, that's pretty well going to conclude the rear wheel brake job on this 2013 Kia Soul. This video should apply directly to other years of Kia Souls as well. One thing I want to remind you is to make sure you pump up your brake pedal before you go anywhere. You'll find you have to pump it up to get pressure back in those rear calipers after doing this procedure. So I do hope you found the video helpful and informative. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourself a great day.